So introduction to clinical research nursing, changing and transforming patient care. My name is Carolyn Thomas Jones, and I'm director of the Master of Clinical Research graduate program here at The Ohio State University College of Nursing. And I've worked in clinical research for over 30 years. I came to nursing as a second degree, and my first job in nursing was as a bedside nurse in the coronary care unit, ICU. By my second year, I was recruited by a cardiology attending to work as a clinical research nurse in the UAB division of cardiology. And my role was to work on a large NIH-sponsored multi-center clinical trial. I was to recruit patients and consent them and perform various tasks coordinating the many patients we enrolled in as they journeyed through the study. And so prior to this job, I had never heard of clinical research nursing. And I learned my role on the job, and the rest is history. I'm also a member of several nursing and clinical research professional organizations, and one of those is the International Association of Clinical Research Nurses. And as such, we have created this 20-slide lecture to introduce you to clinical research nursing, changing and transforming patient care. So let's look first at some of the greatest medical discoveries in history. I mean, clean water and improved sanitation, you may think is not a medical discovery, but it is. Vaccines, surgical anesthetic and antisepsis, organ transplants, antibiotics and antivirals, medical imaging, the birth control pill, advancements in childbirth, understanding the cancer risk of smoking, stem cell therapy, and newer gene therapy and CRISPR, immunotherapy, and now, artificial intelligence in healthcare. So there's no medical breakthrough without clinical research. So what we're going to do in this lecture is to define clinical research, and we're going to identify how nurses are involved in clinical research. We're going to also define the specialty practice of clinical research nurses and determine pathways to CRN careers. And we'll identify how clinical research studies may affect your staff RN role. So what is clinical research? Clinical research is research conducted with human participants with the goal of gaining knowledge to find new and better ways to detect, diagnose, treat, and prevent diseases. And so that includes understanding the development of new drugs, medical devices, new procedures, observations, and identifying risk factors. And there's different types of clinical research. There's prevention research that has a goal to reduce the risk of developing a disease. And so, for instance, vaccines to prevent influenza or maybe COVID fall under that category. There's screening studies to detect a treatable disease before the symptoms appear. HPV testing with cervical cancer screening during a pap smear is another example of that. There are diagnostic studies to develop better tests or procedures to detect disease. And so here's an example, the use of CT coronary angiography to diagnose coronary artery disease. There are treatment clinical trials where the aim is to develop new agents or interventions to improve effectiveness. Insulin, oral hypoglycemic agents in gestational diabetes, for example. And then there's supportive care and quality of life studies. Many of those could be nursing studies to decrease the severity of disease or the treatment effects. And so exercise rehab after lung cancer surgery is a good example of that. So let's take a moment and look at this video from the National Cancer Institute that talks about what is a clinical trial. And I'm talking about clinical trials of drugs and devices. Let's watch together.
Clinical trials are research studies that involve people. Most clinical trials to test new cancer treatments are done in a series of steps called phases. If a new treatment is successful in one phase, it moves to the next phase. Let's take a look at the three main phases of clinical trials. Phase 1 trials are small, enrolling less than 30 patients. Phase 1 trials are designed to find a safe dose of the new treatment, determine how the treatment should be given, and learn how it affects the body. If a safe dose is found, the new treatment goes to Phase 2 testing. More patients are enrolled, usually 100 or less. Phase 2 trials study how the treatment affects the body and how the treatment works for a certain type of cancer. If a new treatment is found to be safe and to have some benefit, it goes to Phase 3. This is when many participants are needed, usually more than 100 and sometimes thousands. Phase 3 trials compare the new treatment with the current treatment to see which one is better. One thing is certain with any phase trial. By taking part, you will help future patients by helping today's scientists learn more about cancer. For more information about clinical trials, including their possible risks and benefits for you, go to cancer.gov/clinicaltrials.
So let's now look at what roles do nurses have in medical discoveries. Let's find out. There are different levels of involvement that nurses have in clinical research. There are clinical research nurses who conduct the day-to-day activities of a study and care for study participants. There are advanced practice research nurses who provide advanced practice nursing care for study participants in research protocols, including physical exams, determining adverse event occurrence, overviewing medical drugs, and et cetera. And then there's the nurse scientists, and those are nurses who study methods of improving patient and client care in the field of nursing. And then principal investigator, they're responsible for developing and conducting research, nursing research, or quality improvement studies in clinical research or implementation science. So clinical research nursing is a specialized practice of professional nursing focused on the care of research participants and keeping fidelity to the clinical research study. The International Association of Clinical Research Nurses developed the scopes and standards of practice of the clinical research nurse. If you go to the ANA website, you can find scopes and standards of practice of many specializations of nursing, such as oncology nursing, rheumatology nursing, et cetera. So these scopes and standards were approved by the ANA in 2016, and this is a major milestone in the professional practice of clinical research nursing. So the Central Ohio chapter of IACRN produced this next YouTube video entitled Research Nurses Making a Difference. And this will give you a glimpse of what the CRN role is, what they do, and their impact. The theme emphasizes that CRNs reassure, inform, advocate, collaborate, connect, and make a difference and really matter. The video is 4 minutes, but it includes interviews with clinical research nurses, physician investigators, and study participants, et cetera.
I think the number one question that most people ask me about being a research nurse is, do you have any patient contact? Do you actually see patients? And the answer is yes. Lots of patients, a lot of the time. That's the majority of our work.
They will give you the necessary means to be comfortable, whether that's lying down in a bed, sitting in a chair. If you have to have blood work, making sure that you're comfortable sitting down. They just facilitate all your comforts so that you feel relaxed and ready to participate.
After speaking with Belinda, who is the coordinator for the study, she calmed me down and helped me understand the right approach to research, helped me understand what would be involved in it and how it would help MJ in the future. After that, we decided to sign up.
I don't care who you are. When you get cancer, you right away go and try to search out what's my odds of living. My physicians suggested that I talk to one of the clinical study nurses.
I was responsible for making sure that he qualified, working with his doctor to make sure that everything was all lined up for him to get on the study. And then since then, really just maintaining him on the study, following the protocol, how it's supposed to. We've had great results with JP on the study.
Not only something that offered some opportunities for me, but it also kind of gave me a way to give my cancer a reason.
A research nurse has to incorporate good clinical science with good patient care. So you're melding the two together. How can I protect my patient, keeping them safe, and maintaining the rigors of a clinical trial or of a protocol?
Probably the most common misconception is that research nurses are stuck in an office looking at a screen, going through charts and data and filling out forms. That couldn't be farther from the truth.
I was born with a lung disease called cystic fibrosis, so I've been doing or been part of research for as long as I can remember.
You spend such long days together and lots of time together and seeing each other multiple times over, the course of 1 week or over the course of several months. And you really get to know just people as people.
They become your family. This is unfortunately, but fortunately, kind of like your second home. At least with my disease, you're in and out of the hospital your whole life. And these people, in a way, are your friends and family.
They're nurses, and so they are close to patients. They're intimately involved with who the patients are and what they have to go through. They understand exquisitely what is involved with patient care.
Well, the nurses really were the go-to people. They took really good care of you guys, but they also listened to what the boys had to say. As soon as the boys had any comments or concerns, they would listen. And if the boys wanted to tell a story, they would also listen. So through the course of the months that we came, we developed quite a good relationship really with every one of the research nurses.
Well, they had a really good sense of humor, and they would listen to us and help us with anything we wanted.
They are all much more than just nurses to me. They are just part of my life now. I mean, it's just really a cool feeling to know them. They're very good people.
Through a rigorous set of studies, 5 domains of clinical research practice have been defined. They are clinical practice, human participant protection, contributing to the science, care coordination and continuity, and study management. And so examples of each of these domains are listed here. In clinical practice, they administer study drugs or medications and treatments. They collect data and samples from patients. They monitor for adverse events and side effects, and they provide patient education. In terms of human participant protection, they follow regulatory guidelines for informed consent and pediatric assent. That patient and family education, really making sure they understand the risks and benefits. They're patient advocates, and they try to minimize risk and ensure patient safety throughout the study, and they're very attuned to safety. In terms of contributing to the science, they maintain study integrity, and they mentor new study staff and scientists, and they contribute to publications and certainly to good solid data that can be lead to, for instance, FDA approval of a new medication. In terms of care coordination and continuity, they coordinate and complete study activities, but they also communicate with referring providers when necessary. They may notice things and talk to the investigator to maybe obtain other referrals for the study participant. And in terms of study management, they may assist with study development, all the tools and materials, but they would also be involved in participant recruitment and recording and managing data. And some of those data are maintained electronically. So clinical research nurses are balancing the protocol requirements and the standard of care needs and participant needs. And so they're often say they have two patients, the protocol and the patient, meaning that they're responsible for coordinating and ensuring fidelity to the protocol balanced by fidelity to patient care and advocacy. And so as you can see from this slide, the hospital or clinic nurses and staff nurses are maintaining the standard of care for patients as you complete orders in the care of the patients, but also looking to participant needs and advocating for that participant or patient. And in terms of the clinical research nurse, we add to that the protocol requirements, which are above and beyond standard patient care oftentimes. And so they have to juggle both realms, as you will, to make sure we maintain, strict adherence to the protocol while also balancing standard of care needs and participant needs. So where do clinical research nurses? They can work in dedicated research nurses. For instance, there are research institutions. The National Institutes of Health has multiple, this is a picture of that, in Bethesda, Maryland, multiple hospitals that are in clinics that are interconnected. Academic medical centers are very much akin to that. Their mission is, contributing to knowledge and research. And so if you're working in an academic medical center, you better believe that you're encountering clinical research across the span of most of the participants that are in those centers. And then there are the Clinical and Translational Science Award programs, and Ohio State is a member of the CTSA, as are 63 other academic medical center hubs that conduct a wide variety of support for translational research from bench to patient care and onward. So they may work in academic and community hospitals, inpatient or outpatient clinics, physician or provider practices, but they also may work in the pharmaceutical companies. They may work for contract research organizations, institutional review boards, and even government agencies such as the FDA. Clinical research nurses have a wide span of places that they may be working. So how do you find your path? Well, as a nurse, the typical path is going from staff RN within a clinic or a hospital, and a variety of career opportunities may evolve out of there. You also ascend to increasing leadership roles, and hopefully that, and then obtaining post-baccalaureate education, perhaps a master's degree, nurse practitioner, and then on for a terminal degree, a DNP, a PhD. And from there are many jump off places for different career paths in nursing. Nursing is the ultimate career path. And obtaining certifications. And then, ultimately some may decide to become nurse researchers or investigators or faculty members in colleges of nursing or colleges of medicine. So, those directional career paths is really up to what is your passion. But know that nurses are essential members of interdisciplinary teams. And so there are jumping off paths also into clinical research. So there's no singular way to become a clinical research nurse. Some may gain a position from new grad into a clinical research nurse position or some kind of clinical research nurse, new grad program, internship, apprenticeship, et cetera, in clinical research. There are certainly some academic medical centers that offer that. But most people who enter clinical research gain first some experience as a nurse and then move into a clinical research nurse position. They still have to train to be in clinical research because it's a specialty practice, just like you would if you were moving from oncology to dermatology or from rheumatology to oncology or cardiology. You've got to learn that specialty practice as well. So how is clinical research going to affect you as a nurse? You may be asking that question. Well, first of all, just know clinical research is everywhere. And if you're at OSU, that's certainly the case. And you may be asked to support patient education and educate others about the clinical study that a patient is on. You may be asked to administer the study drug or intervention. You may also be, recording lab values and monitoring for side effects or other adverse events that have to be, vetted by the investigators to determine if it's caused by the new investigational agent or not. You'll be collecting samples, blood, urine, sputum, et cetera, for patients that may be coming at a time outside of the normal standard of care lab draw times, but for specific protocols, maybe 2 hours after they take the study medication, for instance. And you may be just collaborating with study coordinators and investigators in general. But you just need to realize that some of your patients may be in a clinical research study. So as some people, Patty Eckert, who wrote an article, said really and truly all nurses are clinical research nurses, because every time you record what's happening with patients, those data are being analyzed somewhere along the way to look at effective treatments for diagnosis and treatment of patients. So I'm going to show you one final video to give you more of a perspective of, a patient's experience as a normal volunteer in a clinical research study. This is very endearing, and it's a short video.
My son is a chemical engineer. He says, I like ooh-ah science. He says, there are a lot of people who are spending their lives poring over these numbers and figuring out what does it really mean. And then some reporter takes it and makes a paragraph out of 30 years of work, and you read it and go, ooh-ah, science. Science is exciting in the big picture, but it really is about that long-term study. I found out about an Alzheimer's clinical trial, so I signed up immediately. The studies need a variety of participants. They need people who, yes, have some dementia. They also need people like me, typical people, so that they can have a comparison. One of the hidden benefits of being a part of a research study is you get an incredibly comprehensive exam and not a penny out of your pocket. There are no good reasons to hesitate for signing up, quite frankly. A lot of people say, I don't have enough time. It doesn't take a lot of time. And they say, they're gonna hurt me. No, they're gonna take incredible care of you. Or, I'm scared. But there really is nothing to be afraid of.
Put the ladybug on top of the penny, then place the screwdriver on the other side of the ladybug.
It's good, caring people trying to find a cure. My daughter has Down syndrome, and folks with Down syndrome develop dementia earlier. I'm hoping as a participant that me being involved in the research might help her directly. I'm one drop of water in a bucket, but it takes thousands of drops to win the fight against dementia. I like to think that my participation in clinical studies is akin to what happened years ago. We don't think about smallpox. Not an issue. I want dementia and Alzheimer's to be that non-thought somewhere down the line. Hopefully sooner than later. It's that simple for me.
So I want to thank you for participating in this lecture, and I acknowledge those who worked with us to develop this lecture, including Hannah Kinnear, the International Association of Clinical Research Nurses, the Ohio State University College of Nursing and Center for Clinical and Translational Science, and my colleague at Rockefeller University Nurses and Research Committee. Please contact me at any time at jones.5342@osu.edu if you have any questions about the role of clinical research nursing or IACRN. You may also email IACRN@iacrn.org to ask about the professional organization for clinical research nurses. This is an evidence-based presentation, and we also provide references for you. If you want to learn more about clinical research, we'll certainly make those available. Thank you.